Learning to say no. So I was just watching an interview with Liz Gilbert on her book tour, I guess, when she had written Big Magic, which is a book about creativity, like her approach to creativity and living a creative life. And I'm going to link it in the description box in case you want to check it out. It's like an hour and a half long, but it is like so good. The conversation is amazing. If you are even just a little bit interested in pursuing your own creativity, I highly recommend it. And they get into a lot of conversations about time. Like, there's kind of like two main camps of people that she's familiar with as far as like spending her life being creative and talking to other people about their creativity and so on, is like there are some people who are just flat out afraid of like what might happen if they did the thing and put it out in the world, and like, what if it falls on its face, and like there's that kind of anxiety that can keep people out of their creativity. And then there's this other camp that is telling a story that sounds like, not that they're not afraid, they're telling a story that they really 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 want the thing, but I don't have any time, I don't have any energy, I'm so tired, like how. And that's where I haven't even finished the end of the thing, is like, they're in the part where they're taking questions, and the person was saying, when you're so tired, how do you keep like using your time on what matters most? Like, it's so much easier to just binge Netflix or scroll through Reddit or like whatever it is. It's so much easier when you're so tired to do that. And I paused it before I listened to what she said. I have no idea what she's going to say, but I was moved, obviously, enough to come in here and want to give my own thoughts about it because, again, I've heard that a lot myself. I've heard both of them myself. I've experienced both of them myself. Um, and so I just wanted to talk to both of them as far as like, definitely there's a lot of good stuff in that interview that you can take away for um, like the fear side of it. And bottom line, as far as she's saying, there's a there's a process of getting in touch with your soul to the point where there's a very clear connection with the reason you're making what you're making. Like there's a life force that is being like essentially being born through you, and there's a connection to that process of birthing it and nurturing it and growing it and adding to it bit by bit by bit by bit. She quotes somebody, I forget who she said this, but that the best books you've ever written were written in an hour a day. That like, it's not about going away in the mountains for 3 months and creating your masterpiece. Like, it's a matter of an hour a day. And if you love it enough, if you really, really actually want it, if it truly matters to you, you'll find an hour. It was in a different, a different interview, also with Liz Gilbert, but at a different time. And the interviewer actually threw out the analogy that, like, if you have a lover, like a brand new lover, let's say you're just in the early stages of your romance, and let's even say that they live somewhat far away from you, and your lover shows up in town on a random day and says, like, I'm in town today only, like, I didn't know I would be here, but I'm here, can you see me? Are you really telling me you're not gonna find an hour to like go sneak away somewhere and like, like see your lover? Like, you wouldn't find the time, you wouldn't disappoint someone, you wouldn't change some plans, you wouldn't find the time, really? Because like, I'm sitting there knowing, like, the only time I got in school suspension was when I got caught making out with my boyfriend during class in the stairwell instead of being in class. So yeah, I mean, I would definitely, that analogy landed for me for sure. And so it's like that. It's like there's a love of the process, the relationship with the life force that's coming through you, that is a relationship that you're cultivating just like you would with your lover. And so you can find an hour a day. You can. And the question that the person had posed, they didn't really say this, I guess. I was very much reading into it, but the way that they phrased it was like, you know, when you're so tired and it's just easier to scroll Reddit. And it made it sound to me like it's like the end of the day, like you've kind of like already given it all away and now you have nothing left and it's just easier to scroll Reddit or read Instagram or binge YouTube videos. Like, P.S., I don't want to make it sound like I don't do all these things because I totally do. I'm not really on social media, but YouTube, Netflix, like I spend a lot of time with that kind of like stuff being mostly what I'm paying attention to, even if my brain is doing other things. Like, it's not to say you can't do those things, but the main takeaway that I feel like I had to get into myself, like that I had to get myself to understand, is that my initial approach to self-care was that that's what I did when I came home from work. And then the time that I came home from work every day would be different. The amount of work that I would feel like I needed to do that evening every day would be different. Sometimes somebody wanted to go out after work and get a drink, and now my self-care is clashing with my social life, and often, basically always, my social life would win. Somebody invites me to dinner, that's like a rare occasion, so obviously I'm going to go do that, and then again, my self-care is what gets cut. When I was giving it to myself at the end of the day, it often never happened. Like, I would, just like what this person kind of was alluding to, as far as like I would give it away to everybody else and often be grateful for the opportunity to give it to them in the moment that I was very willingly going to drinks with my friends or going out to dinner or whatever. But like then you come home and it's 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, and you got to be at work tomorrow morning, and it's like I'm just gonna go lay in my bed and like turn on Seinfeld again and fall asleep. And there goes a day, and I didn't do anything to take care of myself. And so this is where morning time became morning time. Like, when I talk about my daily self-care, I don't really use that language. I call it morning time because I personally have to do mine in the morning. Because if I wait until after I gave everybody else their share of me, like, here's yours and here's yours and here's yours, and oh, you have a question, here's some for you, and like on and on and on, I'm happy to do it. But at the end of that, when there's nothing left, of course, there's nothing left for me. Of course, you're too tired to do anything at that point. Like, that's gonna be difficult. That's like scraping the bottom of the barrel when you already poured the whole barrel out. There's nothing in there. So her question in my world doesn't really make sense, as far as like your creative time or your self-care time competing with like when you're just so tired that all you can do is like lay there and watch Netflix. Like, that's why it's the first thing I do when I wake up in the day. It's like I approach my self-care from and my creativity, for that matter, because that's baked into what I do during my self-care time, is I need to be creative at least once today. So that's part of my morning time. So it's like I wake up in the day, and for me especially, like, I'm a morning person, so I do wonder what it would be like to sit with a night person and kind of see like how it would be different. But yeah, like, I know for sure my best energy is when I first wake up in the morning. And so that is when I meet myself. That is when I take good care of myself. That is when I issue my creative energy for the day. Right there, when I have the most energy to spend. And when I did have a job, or even now when I do need to be somewhere out in the world in the morning at a certain time, I just make sure that I wake up up at whatever time I need to so that me get our session together before I go out into the world and start ladling out spoonfuls of myself to give to all the people that I meet, which I'm always going to do. That's like the root of it, you know, when you have when you have a connection with your soul, all that really is there when you get to the bottom of like who you really are is a generous heart. When you find out how to help yourself feel better and find happiness and like true joy in the world, all you want to do is pay it forward. So, like, we're happy. We're so happy. And no one would ever ask you to stop giving of yourself out in the world. Like, that's honestly, I believe, such a big part of why we're even here is to co-create that fabric of relationship between beings. That's such a huge part of what we're here for. And the quality of that fabric that we create in the space between us and other people is exactly influenced by the quality of the state of your inner world. Like, you know, the fabric between two people is half yours and half theirs. So, what does your half look like? Because that is where your control lies in terms of, you know, every relationship outcome that you've ever had in your whole life, that you will ever have in your whole life that's going on right now. I genuinely believe like that outcome is half yours and half theirs. It's half the energy that they brought and it's half the energy that you brought. And so when it comes to anything in our lives, it's like we are always half of the picture, and that's a big guiding force. So I love, like, one of my favorite lines in the whole interview um, is when she asked this older woman, creative person, artist that lived in her neighborhood, and she was like kind of a young, still aspiring writer at that time, and she asked her, like I how do you do this, like how do I get started, like I just don't have the time. And the old woman was telling her that, you know, basically like, what's your favorite TV show? And not anymore. You have time for Tony Soprano's life, but you don't have time for yours. You have time to, you know, what's your favorite magazine? The New Yorker. You have time to read all of those awesome writers and like, but you don't have time for your own work. Like, the question is, what will you give up? What will you deprioritize so that you can prioritize yourself and your work? Like, what will you give up so that you can have what, this is the question she asked her, the older artist lady, what will you give up to have the life you keep pretending you want? Pretending. That's kind of a harsh word. But our priorities tell the tale. What do you make time for and what don't you make time for? There are your priorities. And if you don't have time to do your soul's work, it's not that you don't have time. It's just a lower priority on the list than the other things that are taking your time. And that's not a judgmental statement. That's like a logic, like a math equation, you know? Like, if it's not happening, you're not prioritizing it. Because exactly like the lover coming into town for today only, I guarantee we would find the time. I know I would. And so that was the agreement that I had to make with myself was, you got to give it to yourself first, and then you can give away throughout the day anything that's left over after you've taken good care of yourself. But it can't be the other way around. Like, that just can't be a thing for me personally. And again, like I've written in the description of every single one of these videos, I'm not advocating that like this is gospel and everybody needs to do it this way. But I do feel a calling to share my experience and my approach and the dots that I've connected that help me to feel stable and secure within myself. And as I've expressed over and over, my morning time is my energetic anchor. It's the cement inside of myself that creates that inner security and stability. And I feel strongly enough about that conclusion to want to at least tell the story of it and let other people connect their dots how they want. And I'll leave you with one more piece of wisdom from the old artist woman in Liz Gilbert's neighborhood 30 years ago. And that is, as they were talking about all of these things that Liz would have to let go of if she was going to be serious about doing her soul's work, doing her vocation, her writing. And she's just really Liz is figuring it out and trying to like put the pieces together. And she's like, oh my gosh, so you're saying I'm going to have to start saying no to the things I don't want to do? And the old woman, she had a compassionate smile spread across her face, and she said, oh, Liz, it's so much worse than that. You're going to have to learn how to say no to the things that you do want to do.